Good afternoon. It's Celeste of Astrology by Celeste. I'm so excited to be talking with Mychal Bryan today about his amazing seminal work, Mastering Traditional Astrology, and whatever else comes up during the conversation. Hi, welcome everyone. Caro and Dina. Hi, Dina. It's so good to see you. And Moon Crystal and Jess, Squirrel of Mystery, and that Southern Girl Astrology. I love it. Okay. Hi, Annalisa and Cherie and everyone. Yeah. Yeah. So, and Elizabeth and Carmen. Yes, welcome everyone. I'm so excited to be talking with Mychal Bryan today about all things. Yeah, hopefully he sees this. Let me make sure. You know, we're in the shadow of Mercury. Let me text him. Let's see. Or maybe I can do it like this. Oh, there he is. There you are, Mychal. I was just getting ready to text you another message. We are in Add as Moderator. Go live. Okay. It will work. I push the button. Let me see. Or let me do this. Oh, wait. Let me do this. Okay. Invite. Okay. Oh, it says you joined. There you are. Yay. We made it work. I was getting a little nervous with this, that we're in the shadow of Mercury retrograde. How are you? I can't hear you. Not yet. I can't hear you. Let's see. Are you on mute somehow? If you have like earphones in or something, maybe.
Okay, how is this perfect? Okay, so I just need to let you know I'm okay, I'm gonna put this back down. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Perfect. So I'm technologically non-inclined, and so I didn't realize that if I had the iPad muted, then you wouldn't be able to hear me. So anyway, we figured it out.
Okay, good. Well, you're a man of so many talents. I'm glad to hear there's something you're not good at.
Technology.
Just to be honest.
Technology.
Well, welcome, Mychal. It's so wonderful to get a chance to talk to you live. I am just, as I said, in awe of your talents. You're just such an incredible astrologer and so many other things. Like you have expertise in hypnotherapy, journalism, all the things. So, yeah. Is there anything else you want to, I'll let you introduce yourself and say anything else you want to say about yourself.
Thank you so much. Well, I'm Mychal A. Bryan, and I see one of my students from forever, Holly Bino, is here. Hi, Holly. I haven't seen Holly in so long. I'm Mychal A. Bryan. I'm a Bahamian-Jamaican. You held up the book earlier. I'm the author of Mastering Traditional Astrology. That tome, beautiful, stunning. I love it.
It is incredible. What an accomplishment. Oh my God. This is Mychal's first book. And you can see it's and it just is such a complete work about traditional astrology that is just incredible. It's like 600 pages. How long did it take you to write this?
Well, it's 646. So it's 646 pages. And it took me, it took me about 6 years of teaching and compiling and reflecting to put everything together. And I think in the end, it took me 6 years to put the information together, and then I said I definitely need to publish this book by NORWAC, and that's where you and I saw each other after Denver. We saw each other again in NORWAC, and so it took 9 solid months of just only focusing on that book, and all of the information was already there, but it wasn't in a book form yet, and so it was a grueling 9 months, but I finally hit publish on May 9th, 2023. So I'm really excited about that.
Yes, and you did it yourself, published it.
I completely self-published. I have so much to say about that process. It was a joyful, terrible, exciting, terrifying experience. I have so much to say about self-publishing.
But I love that because you get to keep your profits. You don't have to share them with.
That is well, but I think I also, and sorry about the background noise. I'm in Vancouver, Canada, and so Vancouver is one of my favorite, probably my most favorite place in the entire world. So I'm in Vancouver finishing up the second book because I want the second book is going to be published in November, basically. So I've made it like a ritual now that I come to Vancouver whenever I want to get over the hurdle of completing a book. So that's what I'm doing here right now.
I love it. I love it. Love it. How is the weather there? Are you impacted by the fires there?
I'm not. It's so beautiful. The days have been beautiful, which is really interesting because one of the nicknames for Vancouver is Raincouver. Mm-hmm. So I think I just said the rain has been good, but the weather has been good because it hasn't rained, and it's just perfect. Everything about being here is perfect.
I love Vancouver too. It's such a beautiful, beautiful city. So people can get your book anywhere. From Amazon is one.
From Amazon, so a part of self-publishing is something called print on demand, and so you can do that through many outlets. One of them, a major outlet, is KDP, which means Kindle Direct Publishing. So Amazon has its own publishing arm, and that was what I published the initial run of the books through. The other major publisher, print-on-demand publisher, is called Ingram Spark. Now, I don't know why or how, but Kindle, because it's a part of Amazon, they figured out how to do things quickly and effectively. So that's what I found with that book. They were able to publish that book for me very quickly, probably within a week of me uploading it. I had the final draft, the final proof copy, and then I hit publish. Whereas with Ingram Spark, who's probably going to make a more nicer, some more aesthetic things that Amazon can't do, they took that much longer to get that part done. The reason why I'm going through all of that with you is because at the moment, people can only purchase the book on Amazon because it's published specifically through Amazon. But I am in a little bit of a back and forth with Ingram Spark so that they'll publish the book as well. And then when they do it, people will be able to purchase the book in local bookstores. So I can't do that with Amazon. But Amazon is taking care of all of the Amazon book sales, and then Ingram Spark is going to take care of the expanded distribution so that people can purchase the book in their local bookstore.
Wonderful. I love that. Yeah. So I got my copy from Amazon, and I really recommend. Is there a Kindle version too, or no?
There's a Kindle version. There's definitely a Kindle version for sure.
I recommend getting the physical book because it's a great, like sometimes I just use it to like reference things to see like what does Mychal have to say about Jupiter or this or that. And
awesome.
It's just such it's a depth of beginning in the celestial art. And it's a serious depth. So one of the things I loved so much about it was finding out a little bit about your personal story, and that you were raised in a Seventh-day Adventist. I didn't tell us about that and how your family found acceptance or like the process of coming out as an astrologer.
That's such an interesting question. And so my coming out was twofold because clearly there's the magical, mystical coming out, and there's also me coming out as a gay child man in the Bahamas. And so the astrology and the magic and the tarot and all of those things, they've just always been a part of my life and my experience. And so my family, I think, quickly came to terms with that because for them, it was more important that I just remained a grade A student in school. And I could do anything. I could go streaking through the night. They wouldn't care as long as I maintained a grade A. And the only time my interest in astrology and tarot and magic and that sort of stuff became problematic for them was when my grades dropped. And they ascribed that to the fact that I was doing all of this extracurricular magical study on the side. But for me, I think it was just because I just wasn't interested in being in high school anymore. I wanted to be done with that. So I graduated in the 10th grade. My principal let me take my SATs and our local exam in the 10th grade. So I graduated 2 years earlier than I should have, which means I went to university 2 years earlier than I should have. And so I just had, I won't say a lot more free time, but I had a lot of space to develop and really become the sort of astrological and tarot professional I am today. And I tell people that when I was 15 years old, I gave a world-class phenomenal reading. When I was 16 years old, my readings became that much better, so that by the time as I was 20, 21, I already knew what the shape of my client work would look like, and I already knew what the shape of my offerings looks like to a very large degree, from a natal perspective, from a tarot perspective. I knew what the core of my astrological and tarot skills were. And then that only deepened when I started teaching, and I realized, okay, I need to create this sort of structure for my students. And basically the book, MTA, represents the first 2 months of our 2-year professional astrologer's diploma program. And that book represents everything I think an astrologer should know within their first 2 months of studying astrology.
I love that. Wow, that's incredible. And okay, so you got to tell us your big three.
Okay, so I don't know, I think we had this conversation before, but I'm Taurus. My birthday is May 4th. People tell me,
I'm May
May the 4th be.
I don't think we talked about this.
Okay, cool, May 3rd. All right, so I'm Taurus, but I don't say the other two. I don't tell people my rising or my moon, and there's a reason for that. There's a reason for that. I think when I speak to older astrologers, and I think the older astrologers they're really a little bit more hesitant regarding sharing their birth details, and I can think of many of them. Judith Hill, I think Demetra George and I also had this conversation. Faith McInerney, who's another big name, Ronnie Gale Dreyer, who's a big Vedic astrologer. I think the older astrologers get, the more they regret in the future sharing their birth chart. So it's something I've just never done.
Oh, okay. I wonder if one of them is Scorpio. You don't have to say. Excuse me. No. Can you share your South Node, or someone asked about your South Node? But if you don't want to say anything else, we won't ask you anything else. Nothing.
I'll tell you in private.
Oh, interesting. Ah, okay. So being a Taurus born on May 4th, you were really influenced by the solar eclipse that hit my sun as well. Last April, was it April 20th? Wait.
April, yes.
No, or April 20 something.
I can look it up, but it was in April.
Yeah, in April of 2022. And so that was like, okay, I'm getting this book done before Norwalk, and then like really putting the rubber to the road to get it done.
I mean, it was such like I said, there were so many moving parts. I didn't know what I was doing. I think that's the biggest thing. And then a lot of people wanted me to publish through them, which was also odd for me, because 4 years ago when I tried to publish this book, there was no one around, no one. And I reached out to the big publishers in astrology, and everybody kind of dropped the ball on me. And then when it became known that, okay, Mychal is really coming out with this book, he's going to do it himself, everybody started to come out of the woodwork, and they were like, I want to publish you, and which is nice, because they represent very good quality work. It's people whose work I've admired for years. But I think one of the drawbacks for me was the split in terms of how much they would be getting versus how much I'd be getting. And as an entrepreneur, I've been an entrepreneur since I was 15 years old. So money matters to me, and making sure that I'm compensated for my time and my work matters as well. And
hello, Taurus. Compensated for your time.
Exactly. No, but honestly, and I've spoken to so many world famous astrologers, the most famous astrologers anywhere, who make nickels and dimes on their books. And they can't retire based on the books they've sold. They can't do anything, and they have published the most famous books, the books that have defined our industry, and they can't live. And so I said to one of them, a friend of mine, I showed him how much money I made in my first month, and he said, Mychal, I could cry, because in my life of publishing books, I've never made this type of money. And for me, it wasn't even like a life-changing amount of money. But for him, he was just shocked that someone could make that sort of money within 1 month publishing their own book. And I think one of the issues is that those astrologers who are really not the gatekeepers, but the figureheads of our practice, they represent a time where you had to publish through a big publishing house. There was no concept of self-publishing. There was only a concept of printing out 500 books and keeping it in your garage and hoping that it didn't rain. Because if it rains, that's your entire investment down the drain. But today, I mean, the internet has made things so much easier. Amazon has made things so much easier. Ingram Spark has made things so much easier. And truthfully, anybody who's going to say to you that they're going to publish your book today, as within our community, is using platforms such as Ingram Spark, as well as Amazon KDP to publish your work. The only difference is the name of their company is on it. So basically, I've cracked the code. I feel like Robin Hood. I want to tell everybody the good news. You don't have to publish with anybody. You can publish your own books and really, really make the money that you're worth. And so I'm very happy I did that. It's the only thing I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I have full creative control over everything. I still send the book to my friends who are really top-notch astrologers for them to read the book before I release it to the public, because I don't believe that I'm mistake-free, so I do still want to get other people's opinions. But at the end of the day, the voice within the book is mine. The cover of the book is what I chose. Every diagram in that book, I know where every comma is, every apostrophe is, I know where every degree symbol is, because every one of those diagrams, I toiled and labored over every one of them. So that book is me through and through.
I love that. And the thing that jumps out at me about what you're saying is it's so in line with the astrology now of the North Node being in Aries and the South Node being in Libra. We're seeing a lot of stories about publishing houses and things like having drains and things with the South Node. So you are mapping your own course, charting your own destiny, pioneering the way forward, such a North Node in Aries journey.
I mean, honestly, I think that that's been probably like a wake-up call for a lot of people, because there's this overarching disillusionment, I think, within the field of tarot and mysticism and self-help and astrology, where people realize that a lot of the things we used to go to big publishers for, we could do it ourselves. One of the main goals, or one of the main reasons why astrologers at least publish through the major astrological publishing houses is for promotion. But today, everybody has an Instagram Live. Everybody has a YouTube channel. Everybody has a TikTok, a Twitter account, social media. So the sort of promotion that we needed publishers to do for us 20 years ago, we don't need that anymore. So if the promotion is off of the table, and if we know that we could publish our own books on the sort of paper we want, with the sort of cover we want, with the sort of diagrams we want, it's making the purpose of being with a publisher really just to have the name of that person attached to your work. But I don't want to have someone's name attached to my work if I'm only going to make 90 cents per book, you know? So it's a different time.
It's a very different world, and with Pluto and Aquarius, it's a power to the people rather than the companies or the big organizations and all of that. Yeah, and I love how you said your number 2 is coming in November. You said, because we have that lunar. I talk about these 27-month cycles with that Dietrich Pessin discovered, and so the full moon from that solar eclipse, 18 months since, and then Jess told us it was April 30th of 2022. Yeah, we're coming up to that, and that's going to be October 28th, I think, is the full moon. So right before you publish your second book, all eyes on you. And what a time to celebrate your accomplishment. Are you good about that? Are you good about stopping and saying, wow, I've created this, I've done this, let me take some time to celebrate myself?
I think that's a really great question, because I've been I am a workhorse, and I look at a lot of other people who publish books, and they publish their one book, and they're like, I published my book, I'm a published author. But my model for what publishing as an astrologer looks like is the sort of publishing work that occurred in the early 1920s. And even though I'm not an overwhelming fan of Alan Leo, that guy wrote a lot of books. He wrote a ridiculous amount of books. Dane Rudyard wrote a ridiculous amount of books because back in the day, there was this notion that as astrologers, we had a very specific lifespan, and we went from astrological practice into astrological publishing. And they put everything they taught within their books. Raphael, Safariel, all of these people, they really wrote book after book after book after book. And that's what I want to do, not within a vacuum where it's never ending, but I have a 2-year program that I teach, and I want to put our entire 2-year diploma program in book form. Because fundamentally, I'm writing these books to be the textbooks for my students. Because for the last however many years of teaching the courses I teach, the textbook has been me speaking and typing thousands of pages over the span of 6 years. And now I'm still going to do that because I think that there is something very powerful about speaking and typing in a class and letting people have that experience. But I also want to give people the textbook where they can go and find all of the information. So the next book is going to be on horary astrology, because the first semester of our program covers the book that you have, but it also covers horary astrology. And then the next book is going to be natal astrology. And then the next book is going to be solar returns. And then the next book is going to be primary directions and all of these things. So I have whatever I teach within our program is going to be in book form.
I love that. And so tell everyone about horary astrology, because I practice horary and I absolutely love it. So why don't you define it for people who don't know?
Definitely. So horary astrology, there was a time when I would define horary astrology as the divinational branch of astrology. And in writing this book, I realized that's in writing this next book. So the next book is called Horary Astrology and the Natal Promise, because I love that title. And I taught a workshop back in, I think, 2020 or 2019 called Horary Astrology and the Natal Promise. And then after I revived the term natal promise, everybody started using natal promise. It was natal promise. It was a natal promise explosion, basically. So I'm putting it in the name of my book, Horary Astrology and the Natal Promise. And in writing the first chapter, where I started off with saying horary astrology is a divinational branch of astrology, I realized that all astrology is actually divination. Because my definition of divination is that divination is the art and science of communicating with the divine via an established symbolic language. And within every branch of astrology that we practice, whether it's horary astrology, electional, natal, mundane, predictive, medical, synastry, what have you, all branches of astrology represent us having a conversation with the divine via an established symbolic language. So I no longer say that horary is the divinational branch of astrology, but I do say that horary astrology is a means by which we can answer any sincerely held question by assessing the chart that was erected at the moment that question was asked. So that's my elevator speech regarding horary astrology, and I think that encapsulates it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love it. Yeah, that's great. Mm-hmm. Do you use Regiomontanus, or what house system do you use?
I do use Regiomontanus for everything, and it's interesting you should bring up the house system conversation. I just posted a video on our YouTube channel about someone. I'm doing Q&As now. Every Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. I do a live Q&A, and then I chop up the videos and I post them on YouTube later. And so I just posted a question where someone asked me about how I feel about whole sign aspects, and clearly, so clearly we're still kind of within that vortex of the whole sign houses debacle that just transpired. And I mean, I don't use whole sign aspects, I don't use whole sign houses, I don't use whole sign anything. And so I do use Regiomontanus, just because for the type of astrology I practice, Regiomontanus has always worked. And I don't really like when people say it works for me, but it works for me, and it also represents the house system of the time period in which my astrology is based. So my traditional astrology is based between the medieval period and the Renaissance period. And within the bridge between the medieval and the Renaissance period, everybody used Regiomontanus. So since the majority of my techniques and my practices come from that gap or come from that space between the medieval period and the Renaissance, I use Regiomontanus because it works. Now, there's Uranian astrology where there's no house systems, which I also practice, and cosmobiology where there's no house systems, which I also practice. But as far as practicing traditional concrete event-based astrology is concerned, I use Regiomontanus.
Okay. Yeah, I use it for horary, but I still like Placidus for natal charts. So I do it my way. Yeah.
I mean, there's not, Placidus has a very Tito de Placidus, the monk who that house system is named after. He had a pristine and a stellar understanding of astrology as well as of astronomy and the mechanics behind things. So even though I don't use Placidus, and I don't foresee a time where I ever will use Placidus, if I didn't use Regiomontanus, I would be using Placidus.
Okay. So there's a question here. I assume it was the cosmo astrology.
Cosmobiology.
Cosmobiology. Eddie's asking, is that linked to Moorish cosmology?
Moorish cosmology? No. So cosmobiology is, people are going to hate this, but no one here is going to hate this because I don't think that there's any cosmobiologists here, but cosmobiology is the bastard child of Uranian astrology. Okay. Uranian astrology is a system of astrology that was founded in Hamburg, Germany, and it was called the Hamburg School of Astrology, and it was founded by a land surveyor by the name of Alfred Witte. The name Uranian system of astrology came when they were trying to bring Uranian astrology to the US post the war. And so since the world was kind of on edge about Germany and all things German, Richard Spela, who I think is the guy who brought it to the States, he decided to change the name of the system from the Hamburg School of Astrology, which sounds definitely German, to the Uranian system of astrology because the acronym is USA.
Oh, interesting. And Uranian astrology is all about midpoints, isn't that right?
Yes. So Uranian astrology is all midpoints. Okay, so cosmobiology is all about midpoints. And Uranian astrology is largely about midpoints, but that's not it. However, Uranian astrology is a lot more complex than cosmobiology. So the cosmobiologists, they took what was most tangible about Uranian astrology, and for them, the midpoint theory was most tangible about Uranian astrology. And so that's what they rebranded themselves as cosmobiology, which only used midpoints from Uranian astrology, and it didn't include the TNPs. Now, the TNPs are a group of hypothetical points that we in Uranian astrology call the trans-Neptunian planets. But the cosmobiological contention was, but these planets don't exist. So we're going to leave them out, and we're only going to use the midpoints, and we're going to change the name to cosmobiology. So basically, if you're doing cosmobiology, you're basically doing Uranian astrology light. Because there is a Uranian astrology heavy, but you're doing Uranian astrology light, which is very accessible, which is a part of why cosmobiology was so famous and so popular within the 80s and the 90s.
Okay. Oh, very cool. And there's another question about, do you have quickly say what the difference is between Placidus and Regiomontanus?
The difference between Placidus and Regiomontanus isn't that huge, and it's just based on how both systems divide the space around the Earth, basically. And so that without getting too deeply into the inner mechanics, every house system simply divides the space around the Earth, or rather, every house system divides the space between your local horizon, which we call the ascendant. That's how it looks on the chart. Your local horizon, as far as your eye could see when you were born, is called your local horizon. And your meridian is what establishes your time zone. So within your chart, the meridian that establishes your time zone is your MCIC axis, and then your local horizon, which is as far as your eye could see from where you were born, that establishes your ascendant, descendant axis. And all a house system does is it divides that space between your meridian and your local horizon based on its own logarithm. So Placidus has its own way of doing it. Regiomontanus has its own way of doing it. I think Placidus is time-based, whereas Regiomontanus is space-based, but I could be very wrong with that. So,
yeah, Placidus is planetary hours.
Planetary
planetary
hours, yes,
Yeah.
definitely. So I mean, so right. So that's the big difference between the two of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good. Thank you so much for explaining that. And Christine is impressed with your knowledge. So hold on to your hat, Christine, because Mychal is incredible. He is a brainiac. Yes, he is. Yeah. Oh, I want to ask you a question. What you think about
Please.
this upcoming Mercury retrograde and the double Mercury-Venus retrograde, and what any thoughts about like what may show up concretely for us?
Yeah, you know, I was for a long time skeptical about Mercury retrograde up until I think it might have been 2018. And I don't, so overwhelmingly, I don't, you know, run and hide when Mercury goes retrograde in general. However, what is my thoughts about it? In 2018, when Mercury was retrograde in Pisces, nothing I wanted to do that was remotely mercurial worked. Receiving money from people on time didn't work. I had a big trip to Ecuador. The trip I had to cancel the trip because I didn't get the money. My car wasn't working. I lost my keys. It was a whole, you know, it was a storm of things that just went wrong. And while I don't think that it is logical to say that that's what's going to happen for everyone in general, I think from an electional astrology perspective, if you're planning to do something mercurial, such as putting a house on sale, or such as starting a writing project, or such as opening a daycare center, because Mercury is the universal significator of children, so opening a daycare center, I think that you'd probably want to wait until after the Mercury retrograde. And that's how I view these larger planetary events in general. I always think from an electional perspective. What would I do given this particular sky? And so I wouldn't initiate something mercurial I wouldn't initiate a major sales transaction, a major contractual relationship under a Mercury retrograde. And similarly, under the Venus retrograde as well, I wouldn't start a big art project under Venus retrograde. I wouldn't start a big photography, photojournalism piece under Venus retrograde. I wouldn't publish my book of pictures under Venus retrograde. I wouldn't release my mixtape. You know, if I'm a musician, I wouldn't release my mixtape under Venus retrograde. Because when we do things under any sky, that sky remains palpable within the lifespan of whatever project we're doing. So if I'm initiating a Venus project, then I probably want Venus to be doing strongly within the sky at large, because if she's doing poorly and my project hinges on something Venusian, then it's probably not going to go in the way I'd like for it to go.
That's great. Yeah. And this Mercury retrograde, when they hit your chart, and I think like if you have Mercury on either way stations on one of your planets or points, it's more dramatic for you.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I have 2 planets in Gemini and 2 in Virgo. So I can feel them definitely. I haven't had one go completely haywire. With this double retrograde, my story, I know, is because Venus station square my Neptune, and before it went retrograde, and station direct square my Sun. And I got a letter from the tax board that they're missing a document. And I've been spending all this time with TurboTax and this and that, the other thing, trying to figure out like what the problem is, and I supposedly don't need to do the document, but it's wasting a lot of my time,
Yeah.
slowing me down,
Yeah.
and it's related to both finances and paperwork.
Paperwork.
So that's finances is Venus, paperwork is Mercury. So or Mercury is commerce too. So.
Yeah, commerce, paperwork, all of that stuff, documents, things that we have to sign.
Yeah,
so.
and I think this one is going to be absolutely wild, this Mercury retrograde, because Mars is going to be opposite Neptune when Mercury goes retrograde. So Mars in Virgo opposite Neptune in Pisces. Oh my God. Like California is getting a hurricane, but it should be gone by then. Let's see. Well, yeah. I think. Yeah. And the moon will be at 23 degrees of Scorpio opposite Uranus at 23 degrees of Taurus. So I don't know. Hold on to your hat next Wednesday.
I spoke about the Mars Neptune, I think last week, from a cosmobiology perspective, Mars, and just from a medical astrology perspective, Mars Neptune is one of the combinations we look for within a person's chart, and it's one of the midpoints we investigate to see whether or not someone, basically, if you have a planet on your Mars Neptune midpoint, the organs within your body or the systems of your body associated with that planet could be parts of your body where you suffer from chronic illness, basically. So if you have Venus on your Mars Neptune midpoint, or even just Venus afflicted by Mars and Neptune in general, say somebody has Mars Neptune opposite and Venus, their Venus is at the square of that, then that can manifest as somebody who's either having a weak or slow, sluggish thyroid, but that can also manifest as female reproductive issues as well. Those are signatures that we see coming up often. So Mars Neptune is a combination for epidemics. It's a combination also for just getting sick in general, not having the vitality or the firepower to fend off disease, having low, weakened immunity, feeling as if there's holes within your auric field. And so a lot of times when people have Mars Neptune as a natal combination, they just feel constantly asleep, and they can drink buckets of coffee, and the coffee could, do something for them, but they feel this deep and this unshakable fatigue. And it's because the Mars-Neptune combination, it creates this constant sense of a draining away of vital power. So from a mundane perspective, that's something that we also see in the world a lot when there are outbreaks of things that are virulent or that are very difficult for people to shake from an immunity perspective. So shoot up on your vitamin C, take your calcium, take your glucosamine and chondroitin, make sure your joints are super strong, because Mars Neptune is a combination that we oftentimes find in weakened vitality.
Yeah, and there's a new COVID variant called Eris that people are being sent things that work for health organizations about masking up again, and about how it doesn't present the way the previous versions of COVID, no cough, no fever, but people are winding up with pneumonia and in the hospital.
Wow.
So yeah, maybe a big story about that next week. And
that's crazy.
In Florida, they've got what is that, leprosy? Is it? It's just.
I saw the leprosy. I saw that. That was wild.
Yeah. So I love that you said do what you can to strengthen your immune system, because this Mercury is going retrograde in Virgo, a sign associated with health. It's at 21 degrees and Mars is at 27 degrees. So the sun is at 0 Virgo. So there could be like something really health related.
Definitely.
As well as potential storms opposite Neptune.
Definitely.
Yeah. Have you given any thought to what's going on in Niger and how this could be impacted around this time?
I haven't been following the story. When I come to Vancouver, I'm in like a hermitage where I turn off all my devices. This is the only device I have on just for this conversation with you. But I turn off everything because I tend to get very tunnel vision because I have to finish this book. So I haven't really been keeping my finger on the pulse of everything. What's been going on?
Yeah. Oh, and I loved how you described initiating projects under the retrogrades. That is great. Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah. Martina said she's been exhausted since yesterday. So,
Hmm.
Christine, your rising's 23 Virgo and your sun's 23 Taurus. So, really, I want you to
Hmm.
really make sure you're getting enough rest
Hmm.
and yeah, managing your vitality as best you
Definitely.
can with Mercury retrograde. I'm going to a wedding, Michael, in Mexico.
All right. Oh, well, I mean, that's interesting. I mean, it's an interesting sky to get married under.
Yeah, it is. It's gonna be very interesting to see how it shows up. We already know
Hmm.
part of the story, like the brides had a breakdown with one of her friends who was supposed to be a bridesmaid because of
Wow.
like power dynamics and Venus went into Leo opposite Pluto, and yeah,
Hmm.
and then another bridesmaid lost her job and is not going. So there's already been some stuff. We'll see. We'll see
It's
what else
interesting.
happens.
I think so. For weddings, you should definitely take the chart for the minute when, it's questionable when you should take the chart. Should you take the chart when they kiss? Should you take the chart after they sign the documents and after the officiator says they're now, married? And I think that the signing of the document is probably, I mean, the kissing is a bigger event, but the signing of the document actually makes it official. So I think that that moment should be the time that we take in terms of the wedding chart. And I think you could take both charts, and let's
So the
let's talk about them.
kiss and so don't you sign the document before the ceremony? I think.
Well, in the Bahamas, so my sister just got married, and so they, I'm pretty sure they kissed, and I'm pretty sure that after that we had to go up and sign documents, and then they had to sign the documents, and then I don't know, is it done differently in America?
I'm trying to remember when I got married. I think we signed before we got on the boat. I'm
Well,
divorced, Michael, so it doesn't really matter. But I think we
well,
signed earlier.
whenever they sign, whatever happens, whether there's a signing or a kissing, you make sure you stop your stopwatch, cast the chart, and save it, just so that you could, should they need you for your astrological services in the future, you have the exact moment when they got
Yeah,
married.
yeah. Ashley said they signed before this and a
Days
couple
before.
days before the actual ceremony. So
Hmm.
yeah, so I'll time the kiss and then pull the chart for that. And Magic
Definitely.
Spoon, yes, we talked about the book,
Hmm.
but you can go and listen to the recording
Hmm.
to hear more about it. And I'll save it and I'll invite you, Michael, if you want to collaborate and put it on your
Yeah,
wall.
sure.
Yeah,
Definitely, definitely.
yeah. So yeah, what else astrologically that really interests you or that you want to bring to people's attention? Um, for what's going on right now that you think people should be thinking about or aware of?
Well, I mean, so selfishly, which isn't necessarily anything having to do with the astrological weather, but I've been there was a conference that was supposed to happen in New York. Were you aware of it? The Astrological Magic Conference?
I heard of it, yes, but I don't do the astrological magic. So,
Right. So there was that conference that was happening, and neither do I. And I have thoughts, but neither do I. But I was going to present, my topic was going to be astromancy, geomancy, and the interpretation of dreams. And so in the medieval period and the Renaissance, next to horary astrology was geomancy. There was literally only, and I won't say only, but those were the two major systems of divination that were astrology based, horary astrology and geomancy. So I've been working very hard to resurrect old geomancy texts and really bring that back to the forefront, because geomancy has been called terrestrial astrology. All of the geomantic symbols correspond with planets or signs of the zodiac. You place the geomantic symbols within a traditional square astrology chart, so it can be read like an astrology chart. And I've really been trying to do a major geomantic revival within the context of the work I'm doing, because it's such a powerful system of divination. It literally is astrology. It's like going downhill for an astrologer to, or what is it? It's like flowing downstream for an astrologer to pick up geomancy as a practice. It's literally the most natural next step. And I was going to present about geomancy at that conference, but then I think it got canceled because something was up with the venue. But that's really what I'm very passionate about. And I think that after this book, the horary astrology book is published, in which I'm doing a huge section on astrological dream interpretation, on medieval astrological dream interpretation, because as you know, I'm a hypnotherapist and I do dream work within my hypnotherapy practice. So I have all of these dreams and all of these charts associated with dreams. And a big part of that work is also geomancy as well. And it's going to be in the next book. So I'm like doing a little test by dropping some astrological dream work and dropping some geomancy in the next book, because I really want to prime people's appetites for a much larger body of work later on in the future on geomancy and the interpretation of dreams.
Oh, wow. That sounds fascinating. Yeah, I had a wild dream last night that I was like back working for someone. So I used to work in corporate, and they were giving me the business about something. Like there was all this conflict and hostilities in the dream. But so if people want dream interpretation, is there anything they should specifically do? Write it down or note the time?
So this is a great question. So one of the things that I do, I started a lucid dreaming practice when I was probably, how old was I? I must have been 14. I was at school and I was walking to class, and there was this lady who had this book on her dashboard basically, and it was on astral projection. And I went to a Seventh-day Adventist high school, so I was like, how does somebody have a book on astral projection as a parent dropping their kid off? And what happened? So I waited and I spoke with her and I was like, hey, I'm interested in tarot and stuff. I'll trade you my book if you trade me yours. And looking back on it, it was such an auspicious meeting. And I know that since then she's become uber Christian, uber religious, and so she's put all of that aside. But that was my foray into lucid dreaming, because in that book I learned a method of lucid dreaming, and I did it ever since I was a child, and now I teach that to my students. And so within lucid dreaming, your dreams become more and more vivid and more alive, and you remember more details about your dreams. And so I've taught that technique to others. And basically how the dream work works is they send me their written dream as detailed as possible. And once you learn lucid dreaming, the dreams become 10 pages long, basically. Oh, wow. You have to stop yourself from writing. But they send me their dream as detailed as possible. Then at the bottom, they put the question, what is the meaning of my dream? And I use that moment as the moment of casting the horary chart. After I fully understand the dream, and then at the bottom read their question, what is the meaning of my dream? Then I cast the horary chart. And so that's been working wonderfully for me. I have examples in the new book about astrological dream interpretation. And yeah, I can't wait to share that and teach that, because it's our dreams, we spend so much of our life asleep, and I want to teach people how to recall their dreams, but I also want to give people the tools to interpret their dreams as well from an astrological perspective.
Wow. Okay. And so, what was I going to say? That is really fascinating. Okay. Yeah, I find that really, really interesting. And
it's a wonderful topic. I mean, we dreams. I don't know why that was always such a big deal for me, but I have, through lucid dreaming, I have increased the vividness of my dreamscape to a phenomenal level. And sometimes, and I don't mean to scare anyone, but because this isn't really true, but sometimes it's difficult to know, because my dreams are so vivid and because I remember so many details about them, I have to pause and I say, okay, is this a memory or is this a dream? Because that's how strong your dreams become when you have a consistent lucid dreaming practice. But you can always tell when a dream is a dream, because there's always something within the landscape of a dream that lets you know that it isn't actually really happening. But I want to share that with people because I feel as if, as astrologers, astrology is our superpower, and that's wonderful. But there's also part of astrology that's very heady, and we don't really have an infrastructure within our astrology to awaken some of these other human abilities, such as lucid dreaming, or such as, you know, I don't want to go down the psychic wormhole, but but things that are actually very natural within us, I think we should also be developing alongside our astrology. And I think lucid dreaming is the low-hanging fruit of expanded human potential, and I want to teach that to people.
I love that. So, beads and buckwheat. Mychal only shares that he's a Taurus sun. That's the only thing he shares about his chart.
I only share that I'm a Taurus sun. I have nothing in my 12th house. I'll share that. So
oh, nothing in your 12th house. Okay. Now, the first thing that came to me was when you like do the lucid dreaming, does that impact how you feel when you wake up? Are you more tired or?
No, I mean, no, not at all. I think that one would think so, but quite the contrary. I sleep more deeply because I am as present in my dreams as I am when I'm awake, basically. So I sleep more deeply. And even if I take a nap on a couch, I think one of the things that becomes overwhelming when it comes to lucid dreaming is that you always dream. So even if you doze off for 5 minutes, you end up having a dream that takes you 5 pages to write. Because whenever you fall asleep, you will dream. Because that's something that already happens in any event. But the issue is that we never remember our dreams because we don't have methods of remembering our dreams. But once you learn some of the tools surrounding lucid dreaming, you always dream, even if it's for a tiny nap. And so that's been exciting. It's also been a little bit challenging navigating, okay, if I'm always dreaming, does that mean that, or if I wake up in the morning, every morning at 6:20, because every morning I wake up at 6:20, do I always cast the chart for 6:20 when I wake up? Which quickly becomes an irrational thing to do, because if you cast a chart every day at 6:20, the ascendant is going to be the same. So I've had to come up with a way of you know, rejigging the system. So I say, okay, I'll write the dream down when I wake up, but later on in the day, I'll read the dream again to see if more details come. And then later on in the day, I'll ask the question, what is the meaning of my dream? So that I'm not always casting the chart for 6:20 when I wake up, but I have variety in terms of the ascendants, because that's fundamentally a part of divination as well. Divination doesn't work within a system where you're always doing the same thing, but it works within a system where there's some sense of an organized chaos. And that's how I implement an organized chaos within the context of my dream work.
I love that. Do you do this every day? Do you write down your dreams every day, or only if it's like really impactful?
I write down my dreams every day. I make that a force of habit thing, because yeah, I think that my point is I want for that to be, okay, so I didn't write my dreams down today. And I don't know why that is. I missed today for some reason. And when I'm traveling, that tends to throw things off as well. But I write down my dreams every day for the most part, because I want that to be just a thing I do. When I was younger, I thought that I'd be able to shoot fire out of my hands. I thought that I'd be able to bend spoons with my brain. I thought that I'd be able to, you know, shoot electricity from my eyeballs. And that isn't actually what our superpowers look like as human beings. We can't bend spoons with our brain. We can't shoot fire out of our hands. We can't do these things. But what we can do is create a rich internal spiritual landscape that we access fully. And so dream work has been the laziest and the most rewarding way of creating that rich internal spiritual landscape that I have full access to. But it does require for me to write my dreams down every day. Because if you're just increasing the vividness of your dreams, but you're not writing them down, you're not forcing yourself to remember anything. And so you have to force yourself to bring out more and more details. And after a while, you don't have to force anything at all, because those details will just come gushing out of your pen. It's a tiring process. It's a very time-consuming process. It's an overwhelming commitment. Some days I wake up and I just realized that I can dictate the dreams into my phone, as in I could talk and then it'll write the dreams
Yeah.
down for me. And that's been a game changer because my fingers get tired. You know, I'm writing down 10 pages of dreams with on my iPhone. So dictating the dreams has been good as well. But I think whatever system you come up with, you just have to commit to it. You can't stop, basically.
I love that. Yeah. Okay. And so, yeah, I use oracle cards in the tarot, and I know you also use the tarot. And I love that you talked about how heady astrology can get, because there's so many things that you're just memorizing, and I love when I started using oracle cards, how it brought out more of my intuitive abilities as a Cancer rising. And like translating the picture symbols, not just the the astrology glyphs. So do you want to say anything about how you use tarot? Or
I mean tarot for me has been, I came into astrology the same time I came into tarot, and I the specific branch that I practice is the Kabbalistic tarot. So basically the work that was being done in the early 20th century by the Golden Dawn, which all of our major tarot decks in the West comes out of the Golden Dawn. And that's not actually true, but the ones that people talk about the most. So the Pamela Coleman Smith deck comes out of the Golden Dawn, and or rather the Rider-Waite Smith deck. The Aleister Crowley deck also comes out of the Golden Dawn. So there are the Builders of the Adytum deck by Paul Foster Case, an amazing deck, comes out of the Golden Dawn. So I follow in that tradition because that was a tradition that was based on magic and mysticism, as well as awakening these latent human capacities using the Kabbalah, using the tarot. And so that's my overall orientation. I was just having a conversation about this with someone the other day, that there are so few people. One of the things I think that happens in the tarot community is that there's a lot of people who practice tarot very, very well, and they think that they'll be good at astrology because of it. And they're not. And then there are a lot of people who practice astrology very well, and they think they'll be good at tarot because of it, and they're not. And I think that you really have to approach both things as its own subject. There is no piggybacking. And even though they end up feeding each other, there's a wonderful feedback loop between the astrology and between the tarot. We need to honor both things as their own subject, you know. Tarot requires an infinite amount of study and understanding, but so does astrology. And so I think that when we give ourselves the time to really grow both skills in a robust way, then we do more service. You know, we do a greater amount of good for both of those traditions, as opposed to doing some tarot and then sprinkling astrology on top, or doing astrology and sprinkling some tarot on top. So I'm really into people respecting traditions and bringing things together in a robust way so that we make a more respectable industry. Because so many people are coming into this industry today. I think I read somewhere that this industry, astrology, tarot, all of it, we're a $4.5 billion industry, you know, and a large part of the interest is that everybody can pick up a tarot deck today and say that they're a tarot reader, or anybody can pick up, what's that app that people use?
Co-Star?
Exactly, exactly. Anybody can pick up, you know, their Co-Star app and say that they're an astrologer. But I think that those of us who are actually seasoned professionals, we have to be the change that we want to see within the world, because otherwise, I mean, people are just going to stay thinking that we're all idiots. And we're not idiots. We know that we're not idiots, but it requires a lot of work as an industry, as a collective, whether you're in the tarot industry or the astrology industry. It requires a lot of work from all of us to make what we do more respectable.
I love that. And it's so funny. Teresa, the tarot lady, joined just as you started talking about this. And she is an amazing astrologer and tarot reader.
She is. I love her so much. So we follow each other on Twitter, and we've only spoken there before. But when I was in university, you know, I went to a Seventh-day Adventist primary school, preschool, kindergarten, everything. And when I was in university, that was the first time. Once again, I already had a robust tarot practice. I already had a robust astrology practice. But that's when I had access to the internet for the first time. I'm one of the first people who I saw on the internet doing tarot professionally was Teresa the Tarot Lady. I've never told you that, Teresa, but you were one of the first people I saw on the internet doing tarot professionally. And I was like, oh my God, wow. You know, I knew that I was doing it professionally in the Caribbean, and I knew that I was an enigma because I was practicing these things in parts of the Caribbean that were purely Bible Belt. The Bahamas is a Bible belt. Jamaica is a Bible belt. So I was an enigma, and I've always been still in the Caribbean because now people are more interested in tarot and astrology, but at the level that we do it, it just doesn't really exist. And anyway, so Teresa the Tarot Lady was the first tarot person I saw doing tarot professionally apart from myself. And I was so blown away that people could actually make a profession out of this on a larger scale. And then I learned about UAC, the United Astrology Conference, while I was in university as well. I mean, I was charging $30 for a tarot reading, $30 for astrology. I wasn't making enough money to fly to UAC in Chicago. But I was like, wow, there's an astrology conference. And so a lot of my moments that I really appreciate happened when I was in university, just having the opportunity to have the internet and to really see this wider world of tarot and astrology-based professionals.
Yes, and Teresa says you're making her smile from ear to ear, and she grew up in a rural area, so yeah, had like people probably looked at her like she was a freak, you know, to those folks, yeah. So yeah, you have that in common too. Oh, I love that you told that story. Yeah. Now, I want to be respectful of your time. We're up on the hour. Do you, okay, I will, everybody, I will put a link to Mychal's book in the show notes, but you can know it's called Mastering Traditional Astrology, Depth of Beginning in the Celestial Art. This is book 1. Book 2 is coming in November. Probably you've gotten 16 books in you, maybe more. You're so young. You can
7. I have a solid 7. You know, another thing I was saying to someone recently is that I think J.K. Rowling and her work with the Harry Potter series for a lot of kids and even for a lot of adults who ended up growing up becoming tarot readers and astrologers, for a lot of us, that those books, the Harry Potter world, was where we had the opportunity to explore magic, and we had the opportunity to explore all of these things in a way that felt like home. So anyway, as a tribute to the Harry Potter series, I have 7 books planned, and I mean that's all I'm saying for now. But I have 7 books planned. The second one is coming out in November. I'm really excited about that, and I just really want to give people who waited for their Hogwarts letter to arrive, but it never arrived. I want to give people the opportunity to feel as if they're a part of a genuine magical container where real magic occurs. Because those of us who do astrology and those of us who do tarot, we know that these things carry the force of real miracles in the world. Every time you give somebody a tarot reading that floors them, you are performing a miracle within that person's life. Every time you give somebody an astrology reading that floors them, you are performing a miracle within that person's life. And those of us who practice these things, that is our responsibility, to show people that magic does exist and to show people that miracles are still the fuel of our universe. And so I want my books to give people that opportunity. I know that the first one was really, hey, I want to show you everything. I want to tell you everything. But the next books are going to be more specifically about horary astrology, and the one that's coming up, then specifically about natal astrology. And I really want people to feel as if they're getting the Hogwarts education that they always wanted.
I love that, Mychal. That is phenomenal. Yeah, and anybody, you can follow Mychal at Oraculos.
Yeah. Oraculos Astrology.
Oraculos Astrology, or you can just click the carrot and follow him at the top, or follow me if you're new to me. Anything else you have coming up besides the books? Are you teaching anything where? Or
oh man,
you're always teaching something.
I'm always teaching, you know, and I think that is someone said to me once that the good astrologers aren't known. This is someone who said this to me a long time ago. He said the good astrologers aren't known because they're too busy practicing astrology and they have no time to write books. And that really stuck with me because I had always wanted to write a book. And like I said, 4 years ago, I reached out to all of the big astrology publishers and I asked them to publish my work. But I didn't really have the sort of energy to put behind that because I was so busy teaching. I'm always in the classroom. I never stop teaching. I never close my books. As astrologers, we can't close our books. We have to give readings because that is how we learn astrology. And so I'm not interested at all in armchair astrology where I just sit down and, you know, smoke my cigar and write books about astrology without actually having a client practice. I always want my astrology to represent a living thread of people's lives. And so I just never stop client work. I never stop teaching. I never take a sabbatical from those things. And within all of that, I've still found a way to carve time to write. And Richard Tarnas is the one who told me, he said, Mychal, you know, keep your practice alive, but he says you have to carve time out to write as a spiritual discipline because that's the only way it's going to happen. Because at the time when he wrote Cosmos and Psyche, he was teaching full time. And he said the only way to make space is to force the space to happen.
I need to do that. I need to write my book too. Yeah. I've started it. So Teresa, I've started it, but I'm not very far because I'm doing readings, I'm speaking, I'm teaching, all the things. Yeah. Well, I want to say I pulled the Hierophant this morning for what did I need to know about today. And I was like, this is about my conversation with Mychal. And it was such a pleasure talking to you. I so appreciate you. I hope we see each other again soon. I'm actually going to be talking at NORWAC next year, so I don't know if you'll be there.
I'll be there.
Oh, good.
I'll definitely be there.
So yeah, your workshop this year was incredible. So people, I would recommend going to the NORWAC website and getting Mychal did. I think it was a 4-hour workshop on medical astrology this year.
Medical astrology,
and then also like a talk, and so you can probably purchase the recordings and the video.
Definitely.
And NORWAC is the Northwest Pacific Astrology
Northwest Astrological Conference. Yeah, and I mean, one of the things I appreciated about you, I think that you were right there, you were in the front seat, you were in the front row, and you had questions. And I think for me, I've always appreciated when you show up to things because you ask such great questions, you're really attentive. And you know, the workshop, the pre-conference workshop was a lot of things for me, but I think seeing you there and seeing a lot of my students, it really made a difference for me because when you show up to a workshop, you are in it. You are completely in it. You're completely absorbed. You're asking the right things. So thank you so much for showing up.
Oh, thank you, Mychal. Yeah, it was such a pleasure. I always love learning from you. So
thank you.
Take care. I hope you enjoy the rest of your stay in Vancouver and cannot wait for your second book and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Yes, the Saturn.
Thank you.
Exactly.
That's exactly what it is.
Have a great weekend.
You as well. Have a good one.
Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.